Hello everybody and welcome back. It is good to talk to all of you again today, and today we're going to be looking at Henri IV, the French Tier 10 heavy cruiser. And this is still a work in progress, and the ship, I think, and the rest of the line is going to be coming out near the end of April, so of course there's still things that I think will change. Now this ship in particular has generated quite a bit of negative feedback or criticism already. I had a lot of people in my battles when I was playing the Tier 9 French cruiser say, are all of them crap? And I'm like, well, they're pretty conventional, but wouldn't say crap. Of course, most people were like, well, the Tier 10 is crap because, and initially when I heard that, I'm like, okay, and what's wrong with it? So, I was reading some of the feedback about it, and people were like, oh, the HE is crap, the shells don't work, and so on and so forth. And I was like, okay, maybe something went wrong. Maybe Wargaming forgot to, change a value. Maybe they left it, was bugged. So I had somebody else do a bunch of tests. Now, in case you haven't noticed yet, I was actually on Notzer's account for the Henri IV, because apparently when they were crediting ships, they credited me with Tier 1s through 9, just not the Tier 10. And this is the ship with the biggest sort of complaints about her. So I had somebody else run a bunch of tests, and the tests all came back exactly as expected. So I was very, very confused as to why there was so much, sort of angst about the ship. So I, had to borrow Notzer's account, and I said, okay, let me go try it out. I'll play, like 7 battles, I think, and I'll see how she is. And if there's anything drastically wrong, I should feel it as I'm playing the ship. So played the ship through all those battles, and yeah, there's nothing really wrong with her. I mean, my biggest complaint with the ship is the turret traverse. Didn't like the turret traverse. It was really, really slow. And that was about it. She felt pretty good all around. And there's a good chance that the reason why, maybe just for me, she felt okay is because the way that she plays is very, very, very similar to the way an Ibuki plays. With one exception, of course, the Ibuki still has those torpedoes that you can use. The Henri IV doesn't. So other than that, she's very similar to the playstyle of an Ibuki. And what you're doing a lot of times is you're kiting. You're staying as a second line support cruiser, and you're dropping shells onto enemy ships, let's say 16 to 18, 19 kilometers away. And maybe this is where some of the complaints about her have come from, that, these shells are pretty, I guess they lose a lot of speed in the air. There's a pretty high air drag value, so they become a little bit lofty, and it's not easy to hit stuff at, like, kind of the higher ranges. But again, like, if you've played Ibuki with range mod, I mean, this is nothing. This is just par for the course, very, very normal. So I mean, for me, it felt very comfortable. I've played the Ibuki, and she was one of my better cruisers that I enjoyed playing in randoms, and just didn't really have an issue with her when I played her. Again, the one complaint I have about the Henri IV is the fact that her turret traverse isn't as good, I felt like. The turret traverse was a little bit slower, and sometimes during maneuvers, the turrets just didn't really keep up, where with the Ibuki, you could maneuver and the turrets would keep up, and I do wish that they maybe would maybe buff the turret traverse a little bit, just make it a little bit better to play. Aside from this, the other thing I guess I should point out, and this might be some of the concerns or some of the complaints about this ship, because, like, again, watch, like, that salvo landed on Iowa, and I did a nice chunk of damage, and no issues there, really. But I think I know why some people might be complaining about this particular ship, and it has to do with the amount of penetration you have with your HE shells. With the Henri IV, you got 240mm guns. Divide by 6 equals your HE shell pen, which is 40mm. So if your shots drop down on a ship like the Iowa, where their upper deck armor isn't more than 40mm, you pen and you do damage. However, if you fire against, let's say, a German battleship, which has, let's say, a thicker upper piece of belt armor, you actually don't pen, so you actually kind of shatter your shells. And this might be where some of the complaints are coming from, right? And this is kind of the reason I think why Notzer pointed out that when he used IFHE and he got that extra HE pen, the ship felt that much better. Because once you go and get IFHE, I think your penetration with HE goes up to about 52mm. So you will go through that upper chunk of sort of deck armor on the German battleships, for example. And that, of course, as soon as you can do that, much more damage comes your way. And the ship becomes a little bit more comfortable to play all around. But still, I mean, you know, all in all, I mean, if you combine the fact that against a lot of ships, like the US battleships or whatever, you don't deal with that penetration issue, and the fact that you have quite high fire chance. I mean, with both the flags and everything, you have 26% fire chance. In this particular battle, I only had 25 as I only had one flag to use. So 25% fire chance is no joke, especially if it's coming every 15 seconds, you know, especially when you have Adrenaline Rush and you have the reload module for your main battery. So if you got those things, I mean, you're a pretty terrifying ship. I mean, I had one battle where Battleship commented just like, holy crap, can you stop setting me on fire? Because it felt like every salvo that I hit, he would go on fire. Now, the reload is a little bit slow, right? With even the reload module, you're to about 15-second reload. And this is kind of why I kind of said earlier that she has that Ibuki style of play, you know, at the beginning. And for a large chunk of the battle, you're staying further away, second line, support cruiser, just burning everything you can possibly burn and doing that damage that way. And then later on, as the battle opens up more, as you have more room and you're more able to know where exact enemy ships are, then you push up a little bit more and you try to finish targets off, right? That's her style of play. You know, maybe that's not for everybody. A lot of people don't like that style of play because especially trying to lob shells at longer range with the longer shell flight times, it's a little bit more challenging to deal with, I have to say. Like, you know, sometimes for shells, if they hang 12 seconds, 11, 12 seconds, it's not easy to always land hits. And maybe that's where the root of frustration is for some people. But for me, again, having been used to the way the Ibuki plays, it just wasn't really that big of a deal. So, aside from her guns, which I think I've spent enough time talking about, other things. Her AA is pretty bad. Her AA is not all that great, although she does kind of benefit a little bit from manual AA plus the defensive fire. You know, if you sort of combine those two, maybe throw an AA module on to your ship as well for a little bit extra range. And if you do that, yeah, her AA is workable. Let's just leave it at that. Her AA is workable. And yeah, I wouldn't really say that this is like the AA kind of ship. This is kind of another one of the reasons why you really should be with your fleet. You are, again, going to require their AA as well to really be immune from aircraft, right? And they, of course, will benefit from you being there and just constantly being able to harass stuff at range. Aside from that, in terms of how you would build a ship like that, and again, this is going to be very, very similar to the way you would build an Ibuki in that kiting mode, which is try to build it with agility in mind, so fast rotor shift speeds. So instead of going, let's say, concealment module, you go with steering gears mod 3, and then maybe also steering gears mod 2, although you can also consider getting propulsion mod 2, just because if you do that, you can sort of mess around with your speed, and that combined with the fast rudder, you can juke a lot of shots, so that might be something to consider. And of course, keep in mind everything I've said so far about the distance that she's supposed to play at, as well as, you know, the fact that you have a fast rudder and things like that, and juking and things like that. Yeah, she doesn't have the world's best armor. I'll say that right now. Like, her armor isn't all that great, but then again, she is a cruiser, and cruiser armor as a whole, not always the most reliable thing in the world. So if you are up against battleships, maneuvering at distance is going to be far more significant, right? And so, again, if you're comfortable with that sort of kiting role, where you're staying a little bit further away and just lobbing shots, and continue to maneuver while you're doing that, you should still be relatively safe. Although, yeah, you know, I've still taken bullshit citadels here and there and be like, oh, come on, right? Like, that one shell, this one stray shell goes to my citadel and I take, like, you know, citadel damage. That wasn't fun. But all in all, again, in a lot of battles, I find that if I just dodge and maneuver, I'm okay. And the armor doesn't really bother me as much. All right. Speed boost. That's the other thing about the ship that's special. And yeah, how do I put this? Not the most useful consumable on the planet. Like, I could probably say, yeah, I would have liked it to have maybe something else in that place. Radar, cough, a smoke or something, you know, like something else. But, of course, they're not going to give me those kind of things. They're going to give me a speed boost. And, I mean, I understand why the speed boost can be useful. I don't find it to be as useful as potentially smoke or radar or something like that, but I can understand why they've given this particular ship speed boost, because the idea is if you're creating like a kiting ship, a ship that's mostly designed for kiting away from enemy ships and just lobbing them with HE and driving them all insane with your fires, because, you know, remember that amazing fire chance, you eventually get to a point where you're actually kiting into a place that's maybe a little bit far from the battle line. So the idea behind giving you speed boost is the ability to say, okay, once you've killed off that ship that you were harassing, and don't ask me why that Tirpitz was firing HE at me. I think he had loaded it for the destroyer, but then I was just the only target, so yeah. That would have hurt a lot more if that was AP, actually. But anyways. So going back to what I was talking about, it's like, when you kite, you tend to go away from a battle area, right? So when you're done with that, and let's say you've killed off the ship or whatever, you're going to have to get back into the battle, right? You're going to have to get back into position to harass stuff. And that's kind of what the speed boost is for. It's like, you're supposed to turn your ship around, hit the speed boost, and then rapidly go back to where you are needed. I think with the Henri IV, along with like a speed flag and that speed boost, you're going to get close to like 40 knots, which is kind of like destroyer levels of speed, and fast destroyers, mind you. So it's really to bring you back to battle. And actually, this is one of the, I guess, other issues with Henri IV. And she shares this trait with Ibuki, which is sometimes when you're done that kiting, you look at the map and you're just like, oh my god, everything else is so far away. And sometimes it does really feel like you're chasing things around. And I did have 2 games where the damage numbers was a little bit on the low side. And unfortunately, in those battles, I just felt like I was chasing stuff the whole battle. Like, you know, chase something to here, and then it was like, oh god, everything else is, you know, that way. And that does make things a little bit frustrating sometimes with these ships. The kiting sort of playstyle sometimes is a little bit, let's say frustrating to the person who's playing it. In the later stages, of course, with these kinds of ships, is that as the battle has reached sort of these closing stages, this is where you can sort of go away from that long distance kiting and come in closer and start to engage things. So for example, there's a low HP Des Moines, finish him off. There is the Tirpitz I was shooting at earlier. Somebody else got the kill, but he died. So that just leaves the Alabama, which is going to die reasonably soon, and I'm just going to farm off a bit more damage off of him and pad that damage number some more. All right. Aside from that, thoughts? Well, she's okay. I mean, if you're looking for a cruiser that plays that sort of kiting role, much in the same way that an Ibuki plays in that kiting role, then you're going to like the ship. If you're looking for a cruiser that, you know, is more like maybe the Zhao, where you have the ability to be very flexible, play many, many different roles, play many, many different positions, and things like that, then Henri IV I don't think is really going to fit your style of play. If you're somebody who likes, let's say, Moskva, she doesn't play like the Moskva. You know, yeah, she has those big guns, but she's nothing like the Moskva. So if you're looking for like a Moskva playstyle, this ship isn't really going to satisfy you there either. Again, like I mentioned earlier, she and her other younger sisters, the tier 8 and 9 ships, they all play very similar to that Ibuki style. You know, kiting, returning back into the fight, kiting again, returning back into the fight, and always, almost always, playing that second line ship until the later stages of the battle where you can actually get close and engage ships at, you know, sort of the closer distances. And as for shitty armor, well, I just took like 9 shots from the Alabama and took 4,000 damage, so not too bad if you know how to angle your ship and exploit those auto bounce mechanics. Right, let's take a look at, oh, by the way, I'm just going to actually finish this Alabama. I'm actually going to get this kill, by the way, too, so get that first. Yay for glorious slow motion. Look at that. Such pretty things. And let's take a look at the results here. 13 fire set, 144 target hits, 7,000 experience, almost 140,000 damage. So pretty good battle all around. There is one other thing I sort of forgot to mention, I think, or I did mention, but I didn't really say clearly. The Henri does have torpedo sets, triple launcher on each side. But the thing about her torpedoes is that they don't really play an active role in her normal role as a kiter. And this is a little bit different from the Ibuki. Ibuki, you actually use torpedoes on the Ibuki as you're sort of kiting away by laying sort of torpedoes, almost like a set of, it's almost like having people run into them. It's almost like the way that mines work, right? You throw out a bunch of mines that move at like, you know, close to 60 knots, and you hopefully get a torpedo hit, cause some flooding, and then, you know, follow up with fires. With the Henri IV, you're pretty much completely dependent on your guns and your high fire chance to really do damage. Anyways, let's take a look at some other battles as well. This was a battle, another one that's pretty close to 100,000 damage. Again, sort of similar style of play, you know, a little bit more standoffish, supporting the team, just landing HE shells and setting stuff on fire. I guess there's one other thing I sort of forgot to talk about, which is the Henri IV does have maps that she prefers, I think, more than others. If you have certain maps where there's a lot of land cover, you know, for example, like that one, Land of Fire, then you tend to struggle a little bit more, right? She does do better on maps where there's a little bit more space. So if you have a little bit more open ocean, those are maps that she tends to prefer. Maps with a lot of cover, they are a little bit more challenging when you're playing this particular ship. All in all, yeah, I like her. You know, she fits that style of play that I got used to when I was playing the Ibuki. Maybe a little bit better turret traverse so that you can kind of shoot and move while at the same time. But for me, I think that, you know, with a couple of tweaks here and there, she is going to be a very, very good tier 10 cruiser. Anyways, folks, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to all of you again next time.